Hello and welcome to Anime Lore and Fury video. I'm Shergok, your host, and today we are going to take a closer look at why Albedo will betray Ainz Ooal Gown and try to destroy the entire Great Tomb of Nazarick, and worst of all, also will attack his dear friends and guildmates for personal reasons, and why all of this is kinda Ainz Ooal Gown's own fault. But before we're going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as say thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's get to the topic at hand. The so-called Supreme Beings, the 41 players of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, are usually met with absolute loyalty by the NPCs, who were created by these very players, and who owe their existence to them. Each NPC would normally go to their death, willingly, for their own creator, and would even attack other guild members, if their creator demanded it. But even towards other guild members, so players who did not create the NPCs but were merely in the same guild, these NPCs are still extremely loyal. For example, the battlemate Nazarick, who was created by Lord Nishiki and Rai, and not by Ainz Ooal Gown, offered to pay with her own life for a single mistake. Specifically for mentioning Albedo's name and suggesting to the Swords of Darkness that both Albedo and Ainz are already in a relationship. Again, Ainz did not create Nazarick, and yet she was willing to go to her own death for such a minor mistake. In other words, the NPCs are generally extremely loyal. Sebas, in the absence of Touch Me, his own creator, even went so far as to prepare to strike down Tuare to prove his own loyalty to Ainz. And Cocutus also confirmed that this strike was clearly intended to unalive Tuare. Something Touch Me would have not approved of at all. And it goes further. Even Demiurge, who wished he had been created by Ainz Ooal Gown, and not by his actual creator, Overlord, and who is loyal to Ainz Ooal Gown, instead of his own creator first and foremost, only behaves this very way because Overlord created Demiurge in the image of Ainz Ooal Gown and his character build. And of course, we must not forget Nazarick's penguin butler, Eclair, who was created with the wish to overthrow Ainz Ooal Gown and become the ruler of Nazarick himself, and he wants to achieve this through thorough cleaning. Even this idea, which many other NPCs in the Great Tomb of Nazarick would consider blasphemous, was allowed and instilled by him, and instilled in him by the 41 guild members of the Great Tomb. In other words, this pseudo-rebellion is still the will of the players of Nazarick. But Albedo is different, originally created solely by Tabuda's Magdina, whose face we saw in the first season of the anime. Ainz Ooal Gown make a significant alteration to her character build, out of a whim. After discovering that Albedo was carrying a world-class item, namely Ginun Gageb, the true nothingness, an item that can cause enormous damage to structures and buildings, and whose bearer, like any other world item bearer, should have been determined by a vote. Ainz was a bit angry at Tabula that he has given Albedo the staff without any vote and any input from any other guild member at all, but since it was the end of the game and the day of the server shutdown, he forgave his friend. But this interaction piqued his interest. Ainz thought he could at least take a look at Albedo's character description once, and he was impressed by the amount of background information Tabuda's Magdina had incorporated into her design and her description. As he was again very fascinated by storytelling and occult stories and tales, but at the very end, there was something that did not fit Albedo's character description at all. And I will put it in YouTube-friendly ways. She was very keen on getting as much onyx in her cloister as succubusly possible. She was about to go on various rides, playing as many flutes as possible, and about making life considerably harder for some people. And this is not an accident or an unfortunate side note that Tabula Smaragdina wrote by mistake, but part of the so-called gap moe, meaning that people find it appealing when characters and therefore look that they will have a certain personality, but then behave almost completely contrary to it. And fun fact, one of my former employers had a similar special interest. For example, he hired a guy who seemed competent, but was actually highly incompetent. But anyway, as long as I got the job, I was happy. Okay, jokes aside, after Ainz Ooal Gown noticed that Tabula Smaragdina simply gave Albedo Ginun Gagap, and after reading the character description, he got the idea to change Albedo's character description a bit. Almost like a little prank at the end of Yggdrasil Online, where again such things didn't really matter anymore, since according to Ainz Ooal Gown's knowledge, everything would be over soon, and he would only stay until the shutdown. So it didn't make a difference anymore, at least to him at this time. And so as a joke he wrote that Albedo was madly in love with Momonga, which was his old nickname, and I emphasize here, madly in love. And that was the reason why Albedo now has a completely different personality and underwent a completely different development than she would have otherwise. Whereas Albedo would have otherwise spent times with the Pleiades and the regular mates, especially at night, had a better relationship with Sheltier, or perhaps allowed herself to be served by one butler or another, Albedo now only had eyes for Momonga, who shortly thereafter changed his name to Ainz Ooal Gown, named after the guild of his beloved friends. And this was the first reason why Albedo had something against the other supreme beings, because Ainz Ooal Gown was now called Ainz Ooal Gown, and the name that she loved so much, Momonga, his personal nickname, could no longer be heard. Albedo hopes that she will hear it once more, and during the kissing scene in Season 4, she even briefly called Ainz by the name Momonga. In other words, not only is Albedo madly in love with Momonga, but ironically, the name of the guild of his old comrades now stands in her way. Nevertheless, she respected Momonga's decision to call himself Ainz, and therefore her room, that is decorated all over with plush toys and body pillows of Ainz Ooal Gown or Momonga, and where everyone else is prohibited from entering, has a corner decorated with the flag of Nazarick. But we all have visually seen what Albedo truly thinks of this change. And this is just the beginning. During the 7th volume, when Higeran Termite and his team Foresight intruded into the Great Tomb, the man had the brilliant idea to lie to Ainz Ooal Gown about his dear friends. And when Higeran said that this friend wanted to send his regards to Ainz Ooal Gown, Ainz temporarily lost all composure and became something he shouldn't have been. Something that shouldn't have been possible at all. Angry. Yes, furious indeed, because of this very lie. Naturally, none of his old comrades would have called him Ainz, as they knew him as Momonga, and he only called himself Ainz Ooal Gown to reach out to his old friends, to signal that their guild was also in the new world, so that they could recognize the guild name, that they could recognize that yes, the guild is here and therefore other players, guild members, old mates, are with them in this very new world. And while Ainz Ooal Gown let his rage and thoughts of revenge run free, denying any form of mercy as in a quick death, it was Albedo who watched all of this unfurl with a certain concern and disdain. She had never seen Ainz so emotional before. The fact that he was so intensely pursuing and questioning a lie, when he just had to know that it was a lie, and that his attention could be so easily focused on something so trivial and so obviously false, probably deeply scared Albedo. If one of the supreme beings, one of the other 40 players were to return, Ainz, due to his longing for his old friends, would not be able to foresee any potential betrayal, as he would ignore everything to the left and to the right of him. That has nothing to do with being friends with his old guild members. So, If they were to betray him, he would not see it coming. He could not understand, and he could not foresee such an act. And therefore Albedo was scared for Momonga and his unlife. And that's why Albedo asked at the end of Volume 7 for permission to send out a truly powerful search and rescue party to properly receive Ainz's friends. However, this time without the usual suspects for example search missions like Aura, a ranger type. Officially this was out of concern that they too, like Aura and Mare, might be hypnotically drawn to Buku Buku Shagama, and ignoring all other circumstances due to the joy of this reunion, potentially putting themselves in danger if the situation were a bit more complicated and dangerous. Instead, only people that Albedo could either control, like Rubedo, the strongest being in Nazarick, or those who are absolutely loyal to Ainz Ooal Gown, like Pandor's Actor, his very own creation, were chosen for this team. Because Albedo, now herself a creation of Ainz Ooal Gown, thanks to the change in her character description, felt the absence of these other players as a form of abandonment, and she harbored a certain anger towards them for it. On the other hand, she saw Momonga as benevolent because he stayed with them. For Albedo, it doesn't really seem to be about finding the other supreme beings, but rather about eliminating them before they can contact Ainz, in order to nip any potential coup or danger they might pose in the bud. As mentioned before, Albedo now witnessed how easily an otherwise emotionally regulated and controlled Overlord could be provoked into anger and could be led by the promise of his friends, by just the supposed greeting of his supposed friends, which again was clearly just a lie made up on the spot, to finally get a way out of the Great Tomb of Nazarick by Higuran and his team. And this fear of betrayal, of infighting, is also not entirely unfounded. We know that there were already conflicts in the predecessor organization of Ainz Ooal Gown, namely Nine's own goal, which were so severe that a potential member of Ainz Ooal Gown left the guild before it could even be founded, and he never returned. And internal conflict was also the reason why the predecessor organization of Ainz Ooal Gown would have fallen apart if Momonga hadn't declared himself to be the new guildmaster after his friends asked him for this position. There was also a simmering conflict between Touchme and Ulbedelane Oddle that lasted until both left, though it went never so far as that one or the other party decided to leave the guild. Until again the guild fell apart, but not because of this conflict. And in the New World, we have an example of what can happen when several players from the same guild do not share the same opinion and see eye to eye with each other, after the dragons that ruled the New World before the 8 Great Kings were finally defeated, and all other notable kingdoms and nations were either overthrown or eradicated. The 8 players who now controlled the continent did not usher in a glorious time of peace and prosperity, but instead destroyed themselves in a devastating civil war. In other words, these disagreements that in the game were nothing more than a difference of opinion, which at worst could lead to the guild breaking up, as was the case with Nine's own goal, that later reformed into Ainz Ooal Gown. In the New World, this difference in opinion, these conflicts, could escalate. And again, these conflicts already had led to players, former friends and guild members, tearing each other apart in a cataclysmic civil war. And that is something Albedo wants to avoid at all cost. In other words, the concern Albedo has here, the weakness she perceives in Ainz, which we have repeatedly seen, is the reason, her justification for eliminating all the other members of Nazarick before they can reach Ainz Ooal Gown. He wants to protect him. And the third reason Albedo might have for acting against the other supreme beings is simply that Ainz Ooal Gown spends a lot of time with the guild, time that he could theoretically also be spending with her. The workload that both Ainz Ooal Gown and Albedo have makes it difficult for them to spend private time together, something she likely doesn't want to endure forever. All these things could either lead to Albedo simply trying to eliminate all the other guild members from Nazarick, or perhaps go a step further, and even attempting to destroy the guild and all the other NPCs, to have Momonga all to herself. And I say this because Albedo happens to carry Ginun Gagab, a world item that is extremely destructive against any structures and buildings, but only causes below average damage when transformed into a weapon. And should Albedo, who has access to almost every room in the Great Tomb of Nazarick, be able to unleash Ginun Gagab at a weak point of the guild, the entire guild could collapse. Albedo would then be Momonga's only remaining living connection to his past, his friends, and his guild, leaving him in the hands of this succubus. And I know how strange this might sound, that Ainz would simply end up with Albedo that way. And yes, of course the idea is crazy. But Albedo can, unlike everybody else except maybe one other person, Nea Baraya, interpret and recognize Ainz Ooal Gown's facial expressions, even understanding what might be going on beneath his unchanging face. That's why in the beginning of Overlord, until Volume 3, Ainz appeared to Albedo as a child who would rather run away, while everyone else only saw the Overlord of the Great Tomb of Nazarick in him. In other words, Albedo can perceive and likely interpret Ainz's feelings and emotions, so it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that Albedo would know how Ainz is likely to behave in such a scenario, at least in her own mind. And therefore, Albedo poses the greatest threat to the Sorcerer Kingdom and the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Because, again, Jerknev was completely right, the greatest danger to the Great Tomb comes from within. It would be to an intrigue, an internal affair, a plot, a divide, that the incredible and unparalleled power of the Great Tomb can be turned against itself, plunging Nazarick into a civil war, just like the 8 great kings have destroyed themselves. The only question then remains is how Demiurge and Pandora's Actor will react to Albedo's plans, since they are clever enough to confront Albedo on a strategic level and keep up with her mentally. Perhaps Albedo could even be exposed as a traitor by Pandora's Actor, especially if he manages to be perceived as a true supreme being, for instance by pretending to be in Nazarick for Albedo to see and communicate with her via the message spell, only for Albedo to soon afterwards meet Touch Me or Ainz or any other guildmate. And before Albedo can deliver the final blow, since she would be fighting with her kill team, Ainz Ooal Gown arrives. Shocked by what is happening, he orders Albedo to truthfully report what is going on. And she will naturally tell him how Overlord wanted to betray him and that the other players tried to eliminate Ainz and that they are dangerous. So Albedo was, at least in her own view, only defending her beloved Momonga from these traitors. And without another word, Ainz will approach both of them, beginning to prepare the goal of all life is death, and then use the true death spell to eliminate the culprit. In that instance, Albedo also collapses lifelessly on the ground, because Ainz would of course realize that it's Pandora's Actor in front of him, and not Overlord, because again it is his own creation. He can't be deceived by this transformation, and therefore he will understand that Albedo is behind this attack, leading him to eliminate her. And this would be an extremely dark ending to Overlord, but something fitting with the rest of the series and the books as well. So again, this might be a possible ending that we are facing, but this is just my opinion. And with that said, now it's your turn. What do you think about the video and Albedo's plans and how the entire series might end on this note of betrayal, loneliness and treachery? Let me know it down in the comment section. And while you're typing, I say thank you very much for watching, thanks to all of my Patreons for supporting this channel, and special thanks to Ada Daddy Ada, ASK, Bad Guy Ye, Bad Burrito 316, Bezer, Ben C, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley 0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Dan Pep, Dragonlord Placido Saxophone, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feralchivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Lelouch V. Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Loverazer, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh Hell No, Normal Toad, Oh Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantum, Personage, Ruru, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Cune Caracos P, Shergox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Sir Axolotl, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, Diorg Warboss, Rock Ed Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito 27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Zinukai, and Sonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.